All right, guys, we got a paper today, so you know we're going to talk about a lot. Okay. Got the 22 Ford Platinum F350 behind me. I have the 22 Ram Limited, and then I have the 23 Denali. Every one of these trucks is good vehicles, right? There's pros and cons to every one of them. Some do some things better than the others, and this is all just my opinion. You can make your own decisions, but we're going to cover things today like, you know, I idle in the car lines. I pull a 45-foot toy hauler with a Can-Am Defender Max, pretty heavy load in the back. I put 37s on. You know, I've worked these trucks, I've driven these trucks, ride on these trucks. So I'm gonna go through a list I've got written down right here. Like I said, it's just my opinions, but kind of where I'm at on today, right? Not your 20, I know Denali's coming out with a new 24, and I know Ford's coming out with this new Super Duty. I have one of those ordered. You know, and so we're going off of what's available in today's market right now. And, you know, these three are pretty much the top three trucks. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna start with is the interior. And I guess I'm gonna put all these things in a 1, 2, 3 category, okay? You know, for me, I think the Ram still has the best looking interior. I'm gonna put them in number 1. I'm gonna put the Ford at number 2. And we're going to put the GM at number 3. Like I said, we're going off what's available today. They're putting the new interior in the GMs. I think that's going to be a step up coming. Okay. Exterior for me, looks wise, I honestly would put the GM as the first. I feel like they changed their design. I feel like it has some of the most sleek lines on it for me. And so I would put the GM first in exterior. You know, and second, I would probably put the Ram, just because it's kind of newer, it's updated, it's a little more sleek, a little more curves. And I think you're gonna see a little bit more of that coming on the new Super Duty. And then I'm gonna put the Super Duty in third. And the reason is it's just that it's carried the same body style for so long, and it is a good looking truck, don't get me wrong. So I'm not docking these vehicles again, but that's just kind of my rating on where I put the exterior. The next thing I want to talk about is technology. So, you know, if I'm going to look at technology on these trucks, and to be totally honest, I'm going to talk about the technology that works, okay? I would say that the GM, I was probably the most impressed with the blind spot camera when you turn on the blinkers, the Apple CarPlay. If it got disconnected, well, I mean, it immediately reconnected with no issues. It never hung up on me. It did really good. And it was all very easy to access and very easy to get to. Now, that being said, the GM did not have the technology as far as adaptive cruise. You know, the adaptive wipers, the rain sensing wipers, you know, the blind spot, the trailer blind spot, like Ram has the trailer blind spot. So there's some things in technology that win or lose, but if I'm gonna rate the trucks from 1 to 3, overall technology, I would probably I would say we're gonna go ahead and go with the Ford as number 1. Everything in it works. You know, it has the adaptive cruise, it has the rain sense wipers, you know, all those things if you buy the brand trucks. I'm gonna put the GM second. And I really like the technology in the Ram, but it had a lot of glitchy issues on the 22. I didn't have them on my 21, but on the 22, the radio would lock up a lot when we were going to school. You just have no radio. The trailer TPMS, it would disconnect, reconnect. So, you know, that's just software issues, but my 22 had a little bit of those, so I've got to dock the Ram, probably put it last in that. Now, the appealing technology to the Ram, I would put it first, but did I have some issues with it? That's the way I'm gonna rate it. The Ford is actually everything in it's worked, and everything that's on there has worked. So been happy with that. The next one, we're gonna go into the seats and the comfort. And so I'm gonna talk about the difference between sitting in a lawn chair versus sitting on your recliner at the house, okay? Seats comfort, the Ford's gonna win that one. You go sit in a Ford seat, for me and my body size, it's what feels good. Of course, we got the Platinum here that's got the massaging seats. That even moves it up a little bit more for me. Number 2 is going to be the Ram. The Ram seats are okay. They seem to be a little bit softer. And then number 3, I'm probably going to put the GM. Those seats were pretty stiff. If I had one complaint about that truck when I got rid of it, I'm going to say that I was not impressed with the seats. In a long trip, it didn't feel good. I had to get out and walk around. My back was sore a little bit. You know, I like a softer seat, and maybe if you're not looking at a softer seat, then it may be something different for you. But for me, that's where it came out to. The next one we're going to talk about is a 360 camera system. Okay. Y'all are going to be surprised by this one. So the first place on this one is going to be GM. Let me tell you why. Those cameras are crystal clear on that GM. You can see everything. And again, I just talked about the blinker with the blind spots. That thing's amazing. I mean, it uses that outside camera. When you put that blinker on, the screen goes on, it shows you that. Absolutely love it. The quality was really good. Really like the 360 camera system. The one downside I didn't like to the GM, and it's not really the 360 camera system, is the digital rearview mirror did not have the trailer toe. And I'm going to give that to Ram because when I want to look behind me and see what's behind me when I look at the rearview mirror, I like that Ram allows that digital rearview mirror to be plugged in the back port and show what's behind the RV. Okay? Now I know the GM has that, but it's in the main screen. And so when I've got my Pandora or my maps or my navigation running, I don't want to have to click off of that to see what's behind me. I really like the fact in the Ram that I could look up at the digital rearview mirror and I can actually see what's behind me all the time. And it's just running. It's running a live feed from the back of the camera on the back of the camper. So that's kind of the order I'd put them in on the 360 camera system. Now, fuel mileage, okay? We're gonna go into the fuel mileage. Now, I put 37s on the trucks. All 3 of them have had 35s or 37s. I would say the best fuel mileage, and it's pretty close, was between the Ram and the Ford. You know, driving 75 miles an hour down the highway, consistently, set the cruise. You know, I would say the Ram and the Ford actually, we're probably gonna put the Ram up because I think the inline 6 Cummins did a little bit better on the fuel consumption. The Ford is right under it. You know, I would say it came in for me, averaging same trucks, doing the same driving, the same sitting, all those things. You know, I would say that the Ram, I would see an average of high 15s on my daily driving. And if you put the diesel spout in and checked it, you know, it's pretty close. I mean, within a mile to the gallon. And the Ford, I would say I see maybe 14 and a half. You know, it's right there under it. It's not far on my driving. Now, of course, everybody's driving can be different. The size tires you have on it and all those things. The GM, I'm going to probably put it in third. I mean, it averaged 11 and a half to 12. I don't know. And it actually had 35s on it and not 37s. So I don't know of anything that was different between the 3, but that's kind of where it fell. The next one we're going to talk about is the ride. We're going to talk about the torsion bars versus the springs, okay, versus the airbags. If I'm rating the best riding vehicle, I'm probably going to go with the Ford. It just, to me, on the highway, in town, potholes, stuff like that, it just seems like it handles well. The suspension is pretty soft. I do like that, and versus even for this F350. The next is probably going to be the Ram, and the one thing I really like about the Ram is the factory rear air suspension. I wish everybody would do that. It has the sensors, you hook up, you know, I'm not having to air up my airbags or set my compressor. So give the Ram a lot of kudos on that rear air suspension. I really wish we could see that on the other vehicles. And the other thing that benefits that Ram is if you look, it's like a 2-leaf, when you order the factory rear air suspension on the 1-tons, you get like a 2-leaf spring. And so the back rides really good. And you've got the weight of the engine in the front. It's pretty decent. Now, when you drive it off, that's you know, taking it off the lot, you let some air on the tires because every one of those tires is aired up to 85 PSI. So that's kind of the order I'd have there. And you know, I think the torsion bars on the GM, and I did crank them a little bit. I didn't level them, I came up about 1 inch. You know, the torsion bars, they do pretty decent on the highway. But you know, pulling in a little lip of the garage or any little bump that you run over, you feel everything in those. And to me, if I'm going with it, I'd rather have the springs. Now, the difference between the torsion bar and the other thing is I did like that the GM, you could run all-wheel drive, where you can't do that in these vehicles. So, you know, it's a little bit of a trade-off. You know, it's kind of what you want there. The next category that we're going to go to is the mirrors, okay, on the vehicles. What do I think is the best mirrors for me towing? And I would say the Ford and the GM are pretty close. Probably going to put the Ram in third, but now they've upgraded their mirrors on the 23s. You'll see it almost looks like the GM mirror. I just like that they're power telescoping on the Ford and the GM, and you don't have to get out. And I like having the little convex, the bottom and the top, you know, versus the flip up ones that the Dodge had. So for me, the mirrors, that's the way it goes. Transmission shifting, okay? We're comparing the Aisin versus the Ford 10-speed versus the Allison 10-speed that's in the GM, okay? The Aisin with the exhaust brake, I mean, it pulls great. It shifts a little bit more like a commercial truck, but the exhaust brake in the Ram gets number one. The transmission, you know, it shifts more like commercial truck. That 68 RFE and a 3/4 ton, if you don't need the 1 ton, it shifts like a dream. So go that route. If you don't need the power, you don't need that. But if you're getting the high output, you've got to get the Aisin. And you know, it's just got firm shifts. I do feel like that Ram will really benefit from a 10-speed. You know, sometimes when you floor Ram, you notice you make that power in the Cummins at, you know, let's say 1800 to 21 or 2200. And so, you know, if you're running 68 and you need to pass somebody and you go to floor it and it downshifts and it runs up there to 2700, it just feels like your power is not there. And if you've driven them, you know what I'm talking about. They pull really good. Now, the differences between that and the other trucks is when you get on the highway and you get up to speed, it doesn't downshift. I mean, that Ram, you can set it at 70, 75 miles an hour towing, you hit hills, and it just pulls through those hills. And so the high output, the torque, all those things, it's kind of two different animals. We're going to move in to talk about the Ford and the GM. The GM, I think, has the smoothest transmission for towing and shifting. I mean, when it's going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you don't hardly feel any of the shifts. It's just not clanky. And if you do need to pass or you give it the accelerator, you don't feel that clunk. You don't feel like it's kind of moving around gears. It just, man, it drops. It does what it's supposed to do. Now, on the GM, I'm going to give it a 0 on the exhaust brake because, yes, it's there. You literally have to shift manually to feel the exhaust brake in my truck. I don't know if I had a bad truck. I don't know what was going on with it, but you could turn the exhaust brake on. It didn't really make a difference. And that's even pulling that 45-foot trailer. So, to me, on the exhaust brake, it just wasn't there. But it does win the battle on the shifting smooth and knowing what gear to be in. That Allison, they have it figured out, okay? The Ford 10-speed, where I think you get the best of both worlds, it downshifts on its own. The exhaust brake comes in. It slows the truck pretty good. The shifting is a little clankier in the Ford than it is in the other vehicles. You'll notice, like if you go to pass them on a downshift, you'll feel it drop those 3 gears, or it'll kind of clank a little bit, you know. So it's just not as smooth of a shift as the GM, but the trade-off is the downshifting's pretty good, the exhaust brake is pretty good, and so I think it's the best of both worlds. So really hard to compare the trucks, but just giving you my opinion on all of those. The next one is the engine power and acceleration with the load, with the 10-speed versus the 6. Again, the Ram does good. If we're talking 0 to 60 times on a truck, and y'all can watch videos all day on the internet, you know, your Ford's going to be the fastest on 0 to 60. Your Duramax is going to come in after that, and the Ram's going to come in after that. I mean, that's just the way it is. If I could pick any of those trucks and I knew that I was going to have to do some passing and I was going to have to, you know, get around vehicles, the Ford would be the choice for me on that. The Duramax would be the last, and then the Ram would be, I mean, not the Duramax would be second, the Ram would be the last, okay? But now, if we're gonna get on I-10 and we're gonna drive 1,200 miles, I'm gonna take the Ram over any of the others, except the cruise control. I mean, that thing's just, it's just gonna do its thing. It doesn't have to move around, it doesn't do a lot of shifting. So, kind of what you're looking for again there. I know I'm being a little bit picky on some things, but just trying to give you my opinion on each one and the differences. The next one I'm gonna cover is braking. And by braking, I mean, how much foot pressure am I actually having to put on that brake pedal when I'm towing or even when I'm just driving a truck, right? One of the things I will say is going to my Ram 3500, I mean, I noticed I was almost rear-ending people. I mean, you literally had to put your foot on that brake and you had to put a lot of pressure on the brake to get the truck to stop. And I didn't feel that confident in the braking when I was towing, okay? The GM to me on the braking, again, when I got in it, I felt like I was stopping too soon. I mean, just by itself, the brakes felt pretty confident. But when I was towing my fifth wheel, even with the trailer brakes hooked up, I felt like I was having to put a lot of leg pressure on that pedal to get it to slow down and stop, you know, and in an emergency situation, I know ABS and everything's there, but it didn't feel like it, I didn't feel confident in it, okay? In either one of those. Now, in the Ford versus those two, and a lot of that has to do with the 37s, and a lot of it has to do with adding that extra tire weight. I know a lot of people are gonna say those things, but same scenario in the Ford, super confident on the braking. Like, I don't have to apply, I probably apply 1/4 to 1/2 of the leg pressure on the pedal to get that thing to stop. And I feel like it's gonna stop. Like it's consistently, the braking power is there. So I'm gonna give the braking number 1 to Ford. I'm gonna give it number 2 to GM, number 3 to Ram on that 3500 I had. Rear view mirror. Okay, Ford's got the old school rear view mirror in it. It does not have the digital. Now the new 23s are supposed to have them. So again, Ram's gonna win the rear view mirror on the digital. They're gonna win it because I can hook the cable up to the back bumper and see what's behind my RV. The GM on the rear view mirror would win it for the quality. You could see everything. The detail and the GM cameras was just way better than any of the other brands. Okay, next category, and I'm trying not to bore y'all, is the emissions and DEF usage, okay? Now, I do some idling. I'm dropping my kids off in the morning in car line, sometimes sit there 20, 30 minutes. And so, you know, if a truck has, and we know they regenerate, we know that, you know, if they get hung up or they get clogged up, you'll get a check engine light and those things, okay? On my Ram, I probably got, it popped up twice, the C dealer, you know, exhaust catalyst full, but it cleared itself out. And it never put me in limp mode, and it never told me, you know, you have X amount of miles. I guess it did one time, it told me I had X amount of miles one time, but then it cleared itself out, and it was fine after I drove it on the highway. So, you know, I would say I had that, and then on the GM for that 6,000, 7,000 miles, I had one check engine light for emissions on it also. It was after we had to do a lot of idling. I can't remember where we were. I think we were sitting in traffic and we had the trailer and it wasn't moving. And so I got a check engine light pop on that one. And so I didn't have to take it in or anything. Once the traffic got moving, everything cleared out the next day. The light popped off. So, you know, the Ford, we've got almost 8,000 miles on it today. I've done a lot of city. It generally regenerates, it idles itself up, it does its thing. I've never had a check engine light or a warning. So I'm gonna give it to that one. And I had the 2017 Ford King Ranch that I had almost 2 years. Never had one emissions problem with it either. So we'll talk, and then the next thing is the DEF usage, okay? We go to the Ram, and I would say when I was loaded and pulling and not pulling, I'd probably put the Ram in the number 2 position on DEF usage. The GM again, I do some idling. So how much, but this is the same trip for me every day, dropping the kids off, doing the deal. The GM used more DEF than any vehicle I've owned. I had to buy more DEF for it and fill it up more than any other one. The Ford has hardly used any. I mean, I think I've got 8,000 miles on it, and I think I put DEF in it once. So, and the emission system seems to do really well on the Ford. I haven't had any check engine lights or any issues. Or the other two, I have. So, just putting that out there. Payload, okay? What you're gonna find on payload is a GM 2500 almost has a payload of what these 3500s have, and that's because they don't have the front axle, they don't have the weight. So if you're looking to get into a trailer and you want a 3/4 ton versus a 1 ton, I think you're gonna find some of the highest payload number on the 3/4 ton. And the Ford, they're aluminum, they're a little lighter weight, so there's some balance in all that, but you get the straight axles with the Ford, you get the straight axle with the Ram. So they're pretty close. They're almost neck and neck with what their payloads run. Generally, most of these trucks run between, on a 1 ton, 3,200 to 3,600 if you're loaded out, like a Platinum or Limited, or the Mega Cab is a little bit heavier because it's a longer truck. And I think, and going back to the interior on that, is I really love the Mega Cabs. The one downside is it's a long wheelbase truck to get the same space that I get in this truck. Okay, so parking this short wheelbase truck for me is just easier. If I'm going to downtown, I've got to go to parking lots. The Ford with the short wheelbase, and the GM had a large back seat with the short wheelbase also. The crew cab and the Ram just doesn't give me the space that I want, and so I literally have to look at, if I'm going to get out of a Mega Cab, I have to look at the other two. Now, the crew cab Ram has a lot higher payload than the Mega Cab. So the Mega Cab actually takes a pretty good hit on that. So looking at the rest of these, and I've already mentioned the blind spot on the GM we love, and then also the Ram, the blind spot trailer towing. So you can actually program your blind spot for how long your trailer is, and it tells you in the mirror if somebody's in your blind spot when you pull in. The Ford backup today offers an assist with the sensor. A lot of the half tons have it, but you can actually get it on the 3/4 ton and the 1 ton with the Ford. And that's kind of where I'm at on that. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today is the value ladder. And I'm going to call that the ladder because we're going to say best buy for the dollar. Okay, if I'm purchasing a truck today, and I'm buying a truck to utilize it for work or whatever your purpose is, right? When I buy the truck, it's like today I can put in an order for a 23 Ram, and I can get that truck for probably, let's say 10 off sticker, usually right at invoice. And that's usually what invoice is. It's usually about 10 off sticker. There's a couple dealers, y'all know, they're on the groups. Man, you can buy a TRX, you can buy a 1 ton, you can get good deals on the Rams. Okay. When I purchased my Ram, I think it was a $94,000 truck, MSRP. I gave like 83 for it, and that was a 22. When I went to trade it in, it literally brought almost 89,000. It was right at 89 to 90 in trade. Okay, so I didn't lose any money on the Ram to move into another vehicle. And so I bought a lot of Rams, and I've been very fortunate in that I've bought them right, and they sell for good money. So, I've been pretty impressed with that. The GM, great truck. I traded for the GM, and it was pretty much the value of the Ram, and it was pretty much an even trade, and it's a good truck. But then I went and looked at KBB on it, and it dropped down significantly. So, I was like, wow. And if I continued to drive it, the value was going to drop significantly more. And so if you ask me why I got rid of the GM today, it's because they're more available in the market. Maybe that's what's driving their price down. I don't set the prices, but if you go to KBB and you put in these 3 trucks, then you notice that, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to drive this thing and let it devalue more than where I'm at. Now, if you're planning to keep that truck 5 years, that's a different deal, and that's why I call it a ladder, right? Because maybe in 3 to 4 years, all these trucks are worth the same value, right? But I'm looking at, I'm gonna drive it for a year. How fast does it fall down the ladder on the value, okay? You can look at an $89,000 to $90,000 Platinum today that they're still charging 5 to 10 over. I mean, you might be able to find it for MSRP, but you go look this truck up on KBB right now, with the mileage it has on it, it's still worth $88,000 to $90,000 on trade-in. And so for me, when I'm driving them for short periods of time and I trade them in and get another truck, that's what I'm looking for, something that doesn't drop in that value. And like I said, it may be a whole different window for a 3 to 5 year, but that's something that, you know, you just got to look at and make that decision on your own. You know, now before I ordered even the GM, I've had the 23 and I knew I was going to order the new 23 Super Duty. It's just a fit for me. It's a truck that I like. I've always liked the Fords, and I've been excited for them to put out a big update. This 22 was not really a big enough update for me to move into, and but you know, I'm trading it into a Ford dealer. Fords are getting rare. They're not building King Ranch Platinums or Limiteds, and so the value is going to stay pretty high on this one, and so that's the only reason I ended up swapping back into it. Very happy with the Ford, very happy with the Ram, very happy with the GM. All of them do a great job. We're not, like I said, not docking any of them. Some do some things better than the other ones, but just kind of throw my opinion out there. But anyway, this is the Ford Platinum behind me. I've got some videos on my YouTube channel if you want to go check them out. We basically just do the 1-inch spacers up front, running the Ready Lift 2.5s, got the Carly arms on it, and the 1-inch spacer in the front, keep it from running the radius arms. And then in the rear, I replaced the stock, I think the stock ones were 2-inch, and I bought the 3-inch Ford stock blocks to lift the back end up, and then I put the Ready Air airbags on the back. So besides that, it's all pretty much stock. I've been happy with it. So anyway, I want to thank you for watching the video today. Please hit that like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.